you're incredibly welcome. So, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be here because of you, and we met over a year and a half ago, and you just have this fascinating approach to. You've taken a very depressed area of Las Vegas, an area that most people have kind of ignored, and you've taken an entirely different approach, in my view, to building community. And I think many people have journeyed here from around the world, and I don't think they may realize what they've kind of stepped upon. And I'd love to hear in your words, what you're doing and what is the vision for this area.
Yeah. So it actually starts with Zappos. We've been around for about almost 16 years now. And for us at Zappos, culture is the number one priority. And we actually moved the company from the Bay Area, San Francisco, to Vegas, but originally in the suburbs. And this was, 10 or 11 years ago. And at the time, we had 90 employees. 70 ended up moving with us. But since then, we've grown to about 1,500 employees. And when we were in the suburbs, we outgrew our original building, and then eventually we ended up in 3 different buildings, which had a very real impact on our culture. People that were at the building at the top of the hill never had collisions with people that were in the building that I was in. And so maybe 5, 6 years ago, we started looking for a place to build a permanent campus where we could fit everyone under one roof and have enough land to expand upon. And it was actually surprisingly hard to find anywhere in the entire Vegas Valley. And then we found out a few years ago that the city of Las Vegas was building a new city hall, and the former city hall was going to become available, and so we ended up signing a lease for that to be our new headquarters. And at the time, the former city hall is less than a mile from here, and at the time, the area that it was in was not maybe the best area around. Most people, when they think Las Vegas, think about the big casinos on the Strip, which, as it turns out, is technically not even in the city of Las Vegas, within the city limits. Or if they know anything about downtown, it's the overhead light show, the old casinos, and so on. But if you actually just go a few blocks east, and I think many of the attendees wound up at Container Park last night for the opening party, that area, and then if you keep walking a few blocks, it is known as Fremont East, and it's an area that most tourists don't know about. Even a lot of people that live in the Vegas suburbs don't know about, and it's almost the complete opposite of what the image for Vegas normally is. There's no gaming, it's really not a lot of tourists, it's really just focused on locals. And so part of it was originally driven by Zappos, we moving our campus there, and when we first thought about how are we going to design our campus, we went and toured great campuses like Google, Apple, Nike, amazing campuses, and got lots of suggestions from employees. And what we realized after a while was that we couldn't physically, so we had requests like employees wanted an on-site gym, on-site pub. Number one request was actually doggy daycare, which ranks significantly higher than human daycare. But we got hundreds of requests, and we realized we couldn't fit all of that into the former city hall. But the other thing we realized was Apple, Nike, Google, amazing campuses, but they were actually really insular and didn't really integrate or contribute to the community around them. So we decided to kind of turn the concept inside out and think about how do we actually get employees to leave the campus and go collide with the community, and how do we get people in the community to actually come onto our campus. So we've done things like a couple weekends ago, there was the Zappos Zoo Day or weekend, and we had hundreds of animals, some I couldn't even identify, inviting the community in, and that was a fundraiser. And so that's really this idea of how do we get more collisions within the community, with employees and so on, that spawn Downtown Project. And so a couple years ago, I myself would have felt unsafe standing outside of where Container Park is now, but now it's a super family-friendly place. It's I think we've had almost 2 million visitors there, and people go there to just meet regular people and collide with people. And this whole collision thing is, Yeah, I think that's where you and I bonded originally because it just, for me, it's been this ongoing theme. Like you think about it in terms of conferences. For me, at parties, for example, I used to throw a lot of parties 15 years ago. Would think about like if there were multiple. So one of the things that always annoys me at parties is if people all crowd around the same bar and then everyone's stuck, you can't really move. And so when there's multiple bars, used to open up the second bar first, and people will always find the alcohol, and then open up the first bar an hour or two later, and that helps promote the circulation. And then at Zappos, thinking about in our offices, how do we get employees to collide with each other, and then the stuff that's happening downtown is kind of the same concept, just at a different scale. How do you get people to collide with each other, whether they're in the community or with Zappos or visiting. And I think what's really interesting is that research has shown most innovation actually comes from something outside your industry being applied to your own, and that's why these collisions are so important. It's about getting different people from different entrepreneurial backgrounds, creative backgrounds to meet each other and basically spawn new ideas.
So there are a few communities that you have brought together. You attract entrepreneurs in. How would you describe the community right now down here?
Yeah, so we've invested in about 50 small businesses, so that there's kind of and those are restaurant owners, cafe owners, bar owners, and so on. And then part of that is for them to help each other out, but part of it is just to make the whole area more walkable and so on. And we have a few different criteria. We look at, first, it has to make sense as an investment. Second, the entrepreneur needs to care more than just about himself or herself, but wants to help the other entrepreneurs and the community in general. And then third, we look at the collisions that happen, and we actually have a metric associated with that. We define collisionable as if you're in a public or semi-public place like a restaurant or a sidewalk where you have an opportunity to collide, and our metric is literally 100,000 collisionable community hours per acre per year, which works out to 2.3 collisionable hours per square foot per year. So then when we're making investment, it needs to yield at least that metric. So it's kind of like, I guess, the three ROCs. There's return on capital, return on community, and then return on collisions. And that's how we think about that. The tech side, I'm not personally involved in, but we have a Vegas Tech Fund where the general partners there look at very similar types of things, and we've invested in about 100 or so different startup companies over the past couple of years.
So I just have to say, it's about 2 years I've kind of come here and come back, and just seeing the amount of kind of development. And I come from a country where for the best part of a decade, property developers took over, and they basically, I think the polite word is bastardized communities by focusing on pouring lots of concrete and not actually building a heart and a fabric into a community. So I just really encourage everybody, I said it about 10 minutes ago, to just explore tonight and tomorrow and however many days you remain here. It's really quite a remarkable thing is happening here. But to switch tracks for a moment, you're obviously the CEO of a pretty fantastic company that has done incredibly well, but you've done something pretty radical, I would call pretty radical, in the last number of months. Could you talk about that for a second? I'm not too sure too many people are aware.
Yeah, so we have 1,500 employees at Zappos, and one of the things we've noticed as we've grown over the past almost 16 years is that as a function of size, I think it's just systematically impossible to get around that. More bureaucracy comes with that, and so I sent out an email, I think a little over a month ago, to all employees saying that basically as of April 30th, which was last Thursday, there's going to be no more managers, no more people managers, or people manager roles at Zappos. So the employees, the people themselves we want to stay, but they need to find some other role that doesn't involve managing people. And so it's really based on this whole idea of self-organization, self-management, which is not actually for everyone. Some people actually enjoy being told, these are the 10 things I want you to do, steps 1 through 10, and here's how to do it. And I guess part of it is really transitioning Zappos to be, think of every employee as like a mini entrepreneur, and so, or think of it as turning Zappos into a city that's, there's no master planner of everything that goes on in a city. But what's interesting about cities is every time the size of a city doubles, innovation or productivity per resident increases by 15%. But the opposite happens with companies. As they get bigger, generally innovation or productivity per employee goes down. So,
and you think that's because of the very kind of strict traditional hierarchical structures that exist?
Right.
Is that it?
I think that contributes to it. Yeah. It's basically the system. It's not the people.
Yeah.
And so we want to fix the system and the structure. And so, for example, in Manhattan, there's something like 3 days of food supply for all of Manhattan. Yet there's no central food planner. Right? There's individual restaurants and people that will consume food, and that creates opportunities for people to supply food or businesses to supply food, and the whole system just works, and it's really resilient, flexible, adaptable. Some natural disaster can happen and people still eat, and so there's so many examples. If you look at companies that were in the S&P 500 50 years ago, look at how many are still there today. Businesses generally end up dying at some point because they can't adapt fast enough. And so this whole, that's how nature works. Rainforest is self-organized. There's no one planning all of that, and that's the direction we're heading.
Do you think this amount of self-organization or this approach that you're taking would be possible pre the internet? Or does the fact that people are all connected and communication is free and rapid between people, does that facilitate it, or is that irrelevant?
No, so our system isn't really based too much on the internet, but I think the internet serves as a great example of what happens with self-organization. So you still need basic infrastructure stuff. So you need TCP/IP or HTTP or whatever for everyone to agree on. Or in a city, there's still a city grid that provides electricity, sewage, and all that. And so that's what we're starting out with, and then what gets built on top of that, whether it's the internet or the city or at Zappos, is something that I'm pretty excited about, just because it kind of frees up everyone to focus on the intersection between their passions and however they can, whatever might add value to the company.
So you wrote a fantastic book, a New York Times bestseller, a number of years ago called Delivering Happiness. If people want to find out about holacracy, what should they read? So holacracy is not the only system of self-organization and self-management, but it is one of the main tools we're using right now. So there's holacracy.org, which is its own separate company. And I think the author actually is coming out with a book. I think it's just called Holacracy soon, so you can look for that. Great, fantastic. Well, Tony, thank you so much for having us down here and for helping us create a sister event in the United States. And yeah, it's just been wonderful. And thank you so much for your time on stage. Thank you.